I always knew Jules had a sharp tongue and colder intentions, but I never imagined she'd go after my daughter. That Tuesday afternoon started like any other, me tending to the hydrangeas, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and late summer heat. Then the phone rang. Caller ID, Vanessa. My daughter. Her voice was shaky, trying to sound composed, but I heard the quiver hiding behind every word. "They're letting me go, Mom," she said. I didn't understand at first. Vanessa had been working at Allerton and Blake for nearly a decade, an analyst with spotless performance reviews and a reputation for cleaning up others' messes. Now, out of nowhere, she was being restructured out. Something didn't add up. "They say there's been a complaint," she whispered. "Harassment. Financial misconduct. Things I've never even heard of." My heart stopped. And then it began to pound. "What complaint?" I asked, already fearing the answer. There was a pause. It came from Jules. That was the moment everything shifted. See, my son Henry married Jules 5 years ago. At first, I tried to welcome her in. I believed in second chances, in family unity. But it became clear early on, Jules didn't like Vanessa. No, more than that. She despised her. At every holiday dinner, every birthday, every casual brunch, she'd find subtle ways to needle at her, commenting on her clothing, her single status, her intensity. Henry never noticed or pretended not to. But going after her job? That was a different level. What Jules didn't know, what she never even considered, was that my weekly visits to Henry's office included polite chats with the staff, quiet observations of workplace politics, and an old friend of mine in IT who owed me a favor or two. She didn't know I still had eyes inside Allerton and Blake and ears. I hung up with Vanessa and drove straight downtown. That's when the pieces fell into place. Jules and Vanessa had been working in the same division for 6 months, an arrangement I always thought was too risky. The moment I walked into that marble lobby and greeted the security guard by name, I knew I would find something useful. And I did. A young woman from accounts, flustered and trying not to talk, confirmed it. Jules had filed the anonymous complaint. She'd been whispering about Vanessa's supposed attitude for weeks, subtly planting seeds with upper management. There was no evidence, only manipulation, and Vanessa was the casualty. I drove home in silence, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly the leather creaked beneath my fingers. I didn't call Vanessa back. Not yet. Not until I had a plan. Jules wanted to erase my daughter from my life. She wanted to corner me into choosing sides. And worst of all, she thought I'd roll over and accept it like I always had with her snide comments and controlling behavior. She didn't realize who she was messing with. I poured myself a glass of tea, sat at the kitchen table, and waited for the sun to go down. That evening, I knocked on Vanessa's door. "Mom," she said, eyes red but jaw clenched. "We're going to destroy her," I said simply, stepping inside. "But we're going to do it quietly. With patience. Like ladies." Her lips twitched into something between a sob and a grin. And so, our plan was born. We didn't want Jules gone. No, that would be too easy. We wanted Henry to leave her. To do it himself. To think it was his idea. We'd give him a reason, one so painful, so personal, that he'd never look back. And that's when I remembered something. A certain pair of earrings. Ones Jules swore were a gift from a friend. A hotel charge that never quite lined up. A male coworker who laughed a little too nervously when I asked about a corporate retreat in San Diego. We didn't need her to actually cheat. We just needed Henry to think she did. And the best part? We already had everything we needed. It started with a photo, an old one, taken on a corporate retreat 2 years ago. Jules, holding a wine glass, laughing a little too freely with a man named Derek Linton. Derek was a mid-level partner at Allerton and Blake and had a reputation for team building that often involved hotel suites and locked doors. Vanessa found the photo buried in the firm's old online gallery. It was harmless at first glance, but we both knew better. I printed it on glossy paper and mailed it to Henry's home in an unmarked envelope. No note. No explanation. Then we waited. Within 3 days, he called me. "Mom, did you send something to our house?" I played innocent. "No, why?" "There was this photo." Jules and some guy. Weird. Oh. I replied casually. Derek Linton? A pause. You know him? He used to date one of the secretaries at the firm. Terrible reputation. Fired, I believe. After some allegations. I could hear the gears turning in Henry's head through the silence. He said nothing more and hung up. Next came the hotel reservation. Vanessa's friend in HR forwarded a record. Jules had booked a private room at a resort near Lake Marin 6 weeks ago. It was billed to a company card but listed as personal time. We created a fake email, posing as a front desk clerk, and forwarded the invoice to Henry's inbox. The line item that got him, champagne service for 2, midnight. The next time I visited their house, things were already shifting. Jules avoided eye contact. Henry didn't sit beside her. And then, while she was in the kitchen, he turned to me. Do you think she'd do something like that? He asked quietly. I didn't answer directly. I just placed my hand on his and said, sometimes the people we trust most are the ones we shouldn't. Vanessa was a genius with digital sleight of hand. We planted a few more things, text to a spoofed number saved as D, short enough to look like flirtation, vague enough to avoid specifics. A receipt for perfume bought at a store Jules had never visited before. A message left half-typed on Jules's tablet while she was in the shower, reading only, you know he suspects. I think we need to. We never finished the sentence. And yet, each breadcrumb worked. Henry started working late again, but this time not to avoid me. He came over twice that week, asking strange questions about loyalty and family, about whether it's better to forgive or to start over. Then, on Sunday morning, Vanessa got the message we'd been waiting for. Henry, can you meet me? Alone. I need to talk. I don't know what's real anymore. We met at the bakery downtown. Vanessa wore light makeup and brought a small box of his favorite pastries, something Jules had forgotten he liked. They spoke for an hour. She never accused Jules. Never confirmed anything. She just asked one thing. Do you feel like she still sees you? Henry didn't answer. But I knew the moment he went home that afternoon, something cracked. That night, Jules called me. Panicked. Voice trembling. Claire, did you talk to Henry? He's acting strange. He's not answering me. He's locked himself in the study. I smiled and stirred my tea. I'm sure he's just thinking. By the next Friday, Henry moved into a rental apartment on Halberd Street. 2 weeks later, he filed for divorce. And Jules? She never saw it coming. Jules didn't go quietly. The moment Henry left, she turned rabid. Showing up at his office. Calling my house. Messaging Vanessa under fake accounts with thinly veiled threats. Her control was slipping and she knew it, and that made her dangerous. Vanessa warned me, she's going to try to turn this around. She'll say you manipulated him. Let her try. We didn't have to lift a finger. She did the rest herself. One afternoon, Vanessa received a package at her apartment. No return address. Inside was a stack of printed emails. Screenshots of conversations, edited, obviously, to make it look like Vanessa had been sabotaging Jules at work for years. But whoever put the packet together had made a mistake. The headers didn't match real company emails. Fonts were inconsistent. Timestamps didn't align. She brought it straight to me. She's desperate, I said. And getting sloppy. So, we leaked it. Not to Henry. To HR, Vanessa walked into the office with the packet tucked in a company envelope and said, calmly, someone's trying to impersonate our email system. Might be a cybersecurity issue. Within 48 hours, IT was all over it. By Monday, Jules was suspended pending investigation. That was the beginning of the end for her career. Allerton and Blake couldn't risk being tied to internal impersonation and harassment claims, even if they were indirectly involved. Even more so because Jules had been climbing toward a management promotion. Now, every whisper in the office carried her name like a curse. Meanwhile, Henry quietly started transferring funds out of their joint account. I never told him to. But I knew the moment he did, he was past the point of return. Jules didn't take that well. She called me, crying this time. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. Claire, I know we haven't always gotten along, but this is your fault. You let Vanessa poison him. She hates me. She always has. I know what you're doing. And I won't let you win. That message? I saved it. And I forwarded it to Henry. He responded simply. I didn't think she could sound like that. Like a stranger. Good. He was starting to see her clearly now, without the veil of loyalty clouding his eyes. The final blow came the following Thursday. Henry came to me for dinner. We were sitting in the living room when he pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. She said she never wanted kids, he said, voice hollow. But now I think she just didn't want them with me. Inside the box was the engagement ring, the one he bought with the last of his savings 5 years ago. He'd taken it back. I placed my hand on his. You'll find someone who doesn't make you feel like a burden. I already knew who. Henry moved quickly. Maybe it was the shock of betrayal, or maybe something had broken free inside him. But by the end of October, he was already seeing someone new. Her name was Elise. 38, warm brown eyes, and the kind of quiet confidence that made people feel seen. She wasn't flashy, didn't speak in sharp edges like Jules. No power plays. No drama. Vanessa met her first, by coincidence. She bumped into Henry at the downtown farmer's market while Elise was helping him pick apples. Vanessa watched, pretending not to notice, but the ease between them was impossible to ignore. Mom, she told me later, I think he's happy. Like, genuinely happy. I invited Elise over for dinner a few weeks later. She accepted without hesitation. She arrived with a homemade casserole, a bottle of Spanish Red, and a thank you card handwritten. I've heard so much about you, she said, smiling warmly as I took her coat. Henry speaks so highly of his mother. And Vanessa. That was the first test, and she passed without even knowing she was being tested. Jules had made it clear from day one that Vanessa was an inconvenience. A relic from a version of Henry she wanted erased. Elise? She asked Vanessa about her job. Listened attentively. Even asked for her thoughts on a nonprofit she wanted to donate to. For the first time in years, I watched my family around the table without tension hanging between every bite. Elise leaned in and whispered while we cleared the plates. I hope it's okay that I came. I know it's early. I really care about him. I squeezed her hand. You're already family, I said. And I meant it. The contrast between her and Jules was surgical. The way she asked about Henry's late dog. The way she hugged Vanessa goodnight. The way she instinctively helped dry dishes without asking. Later that week, Henry told me they were planning a weekend trip. Just something simple, he said. She doesn't want 5-star hotels or champagne. She wants a lake and silence. I didn't say it aloud, but I knew Jules was finished. And the best part? She knew it too. The calls became more frantic. One message at 2:13 a.m. simply read, I can't believe you replaced me so fast. She's not better. She's just easier. That one? I didn't forward. I deleted it. Because Elise wasn't easier. She was simply real. And she reminded Henry of the version of himself Jules had spent years burying. The version we had been fighting to save. It was a rainy Wednesday when Jules made her last move. Henry had stopped returning her messages weeks ago. The divorce papers had been served. She'd already been quietly let go from Allerton and Blake under the guise of reorganization. Her reputation was scorched, and most of her friends had drifted away. But Jules wasn't the type to disappear without a final performance. She showed up at Henry's office, in heels too high for a storm and a coat too thin for the season. His assistant, Karen, called me after it happened. She barged past reception. Claire, she said. No appointment. Walked straight into his office and shut the door. Henry told me the rest later that night, after Elise had gone home. She cried, he said, pouring himself a glass of water like his hands were still shaking. Said I misunderstood everything. That she never cheated. That it was all a mistake. She begged me to take her back. And what did you say? I asked. He looked at me with tired eyes and shrugged. I told her something I should have said years ago. That I don't like the person I am when I'm with her. He paused, then added, and I don't think she even likes herself. I felt a strange relief flood through me. For years, Henry had been twisted into someone I didn't recognize. Silent at family dinners. Always apologizing for Jules's cruelty. hesitant to visit me or Vanessa, like he was bracing for punishment afterward. But now he was shedding that skin. Later that week, Vanessa received a package at her desk. No name, no return address. Inside, a letter. It was from Jules. Not an apology. Not a confession. Just venom. She accused Vanessa of orchestrating the breakup, of manipulating Henry, of poisoning the family. And at the end, in bold, slanted handwriting, "You may have won, but you'll never be me." Vanessa read it silently, folded the paper, and calmly dropped it in the shredder beside her desk. Then she took a picture of the shredded pieces. She sent it to me with a single caption: "Some trash needs proper disposal." I laughed until I cried. Jules never reached out again after that. Not to Henry. Not to me. Not to anyone. And when I saw her 6 months later, alone, walking briskly across a plaza downtown, I didn't wave. I didn't slow down. I just kept walking. Because the best revenge? It isn't rage. Or public humiliation. It's watching someone self-destruct under the weight of their own bitterness, while the people they tried to ruin finally start to live. The house felt different without her. Quieter, yes. But not empty. Not cold. Jules had left behind no trace of herself. No boxes to retrieve. No gifts to reclaim. Not even a farewell note. Just a silence that rang louder than any slammed door. And strangely, it suited us. Henry spent the first weeks adjusting to the stillness. No more second-guessing every word he said. No more sidelong glances when he complimented Vanessa's new project or spent an hour with me talking about childhood memories. He was no longer walking through life on eggshells. And I finally saw my son again. The one who used to bring me lilacs for Mother's Day. Who used to call just to ask how I was sleeping. He'd been buried for years, but now he was resurfacing. Elise helped that more than anything. She brought laughter back to the family table. She wasn't trying to impress or compete. She listened. She laughed freely, even at my old stories. And when Henry looked at her, it wasn't the look of a man guarding his heart, it was the look of someone letting it finally breathe. Vanessa, too, began to smile more. She no longer flinched when her phone buzzed. No more workplace gossip. No one giving her side eyes in the break room. With Jules gone, the toxicity evaporated. One Sunday, while Elise and Vanessa were cooking in the kitchen together, something I hadn't seen in over 5 years, I stepped onto the back porch with Henry. He sat beside me on the swing, his gaze on the horizon, his expression soft. "You know," he said, "I used to think silence was peace." I waited. But it wasn't. Silence was me being too tired to fight. "This," he gestured inside toward the sound of Elise laughing at something Vanessa said, "this is peace." I nodded slowly. "And you deserve it." He looked at me then. "I'm sorry, Mom. For not seeing things earlier. For letting her push you away." "You're here now," I said. "That's all that matters." He hesitated. "Did you always know what she was doing?" I didn't lie. I suspected. But I didn't want to lose you. So I waited until you were ready to see it yourself. He reached over and took my hand. "Thank you for waiting." We sat there a long time, listening to the quiet sounds of a house filled with warmth again. No raised voices. No false pleasantries. No one calculating how to win a conversation. Just family. Just life. Returning to us, inch by inch. And Jules? Jules vanished from all of it. No one said her name anymore. Not out of fear. But because it didn't belong in the story of what came next. 3 months after Jules was suspended, the board made it official. She would not be returning to Allerton and Blake. No fanfare. No internal memo. Just a quietly updated org chart where her name vanished like it had never existed. But what happened next? That made waves. Vanessa got promoted. Not laterally, not with a meaningless title change. She was moved into the exact role Jules had been grooming herself for, senior strategy lead. It was poetic. And it was public. At the quarterly meeting, the division head stood at the podium and said, "We're proud to recognize the quiet leadership and consistent integrity of someone who never once compromised her character, even under pressure." The room erupted in applause. Even the ones who had once whispered rumors now clapped loudly. Because now they knew. And Jules? She had no seat in that room anymore. Vanessa gave a short speech. Calm, poised, gracious. Not a word about the chaos behind the scenes. Just one line stood out, and she made sure to look directly at the department heads as she said it. Sometimes, real leadership is revealed when no one thinks you're watching. That afternoon, HR found a surprise waiting for them, an envelope of handwritten notes and a thumb drive. It contained the original falsified complaint Jules had filed, a forensic comparison of metadata on the forged emails, and a full breakdown of timeline inconsistencies. Vanessa didn't submit it for revenge. She submitted it to protect herself and others. I want it on record, she told HR, so no one else goes through what I did. Her department threw a small celebration that Friday. Balloons, cupcakes, champagne flutes of sparkling cider. And for the first time in months, Vanessa looked relaxed, unburdened. I watched from the doorway of her office as she laughed with her team. She caught my eye, walked over, and hugged me. We did it, she whispered. No, I said. You did it. I just gave you the room to breathe. At home, Henry was already planning their first vacation, just him and Elise. A quiet trip to the coast. Long walks. No phones. He even asked Vanessa to house-sit while they were gone. That night, I made tea and sat in my chair, the old one by the window. And I thought about how far we'd come. How it all started with a whisper over coffee, and how it ended with a woman regaining her voice in the loudest way possible. And Jules? She was nowhere to be found. Just a name erased from a door. A title passed on. A memory that no longer hurt. We thought she was gone. And for a while, she was. Silent. Vanished. Out of sight, out of mind. Until the holiday gala. Allerton and Blake's end-of-year gala was a formal affair, reserved for executives, longtime clients, and partners. Vanessa was attending this year as a senior lead, and she invited me as her guest. I want you there, she said. You've earned it. Henry and Elise were coming too, as sponsors through Henry's new consulting firm. We were all looking forward to a calm, elegant night, a fresh start. But Jules wasn't done. She wasn't invited. She had no affiliation left with the firm. But that didn't stop her from showing up. She wore red. The only one in red. Everyone else followed the white and gold dress code. She walked in like she still belonged, shoulders back, chin high, that familiar frost in her eyes. And then she saw us. Henry, standing with Elise, his arm around her waist. Vanessa, laughing with two board members. Me, standing beside them all. Jules froze. For a second, I thought she might turn around and leave. But then she walked straight toward Henry. Elise noticed her first. She tightened her grip on his arm, but Henry didn't move. Didn't flinch. Jules, he said coolly, as if he were greeting a barista, not his ex-wife. Henry, she said, her voice low, intense. I just want to talk. He nodded, calm. Sure, but not here. That's when I knew he wasn't scared of her anymore. They stepped outside for 5 minutes. When Henry returned, he looked lighter. Not shaken. Not angry. Just done. What did she say? I asked later. She tried to say she was better now. That she realized her mistakes. That she wanted to talk about starting over. And? He smiled faintly. I told her I already did. Back inside, Jules lingered near the back wall alone. Eyes darting between the clusters of guests, hoping someone would recognize her. Pull her in. No one did. Not even the clients she used to flatter. Not even the assistants she once bullied. She stood in that dress, surrounded by golden decor and champagne towers, and realized something I hoped she'd never forget. The room had moved on without her. And we had too. As we left, Vanessa leaned in and said, that felt final. I nodded. It was. Because for the first time, Jules was truly invisible. And she had done it all to herself. It happened on a quiet night, just after New Year's. Henry and Elise invited me over for dinner. Nothing fancy, just roast chicken, wine, and a fire crackling in their newly renovated living room. The walls still smelled faintly of paint, and their rescue dog, Juniper, curled at my feet like I belonged there. Halfway through dessert, Elise disappeared into the bedroom and returned with a small box. She handed it to me without a word. I looked up at her confused. "Go on," she said, smiling softly. I opened the lid. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet engraved on the inside. "Thank you for saving him." My breath caught in my throat. "I know what you did," Elise said. "What you and Vanessa went through to get him out." I tried to speak, but she continued. "I know it wasn't easy. That he wouldn't have seen it on his own. And I know you stayed quiet, patient. Not to hurt her, but to protect him. And now, I see him. Every day. And I see what it cost you." Tears welled up before I could stop them. Not because of the gift, though it was beautiful, but because for the first time since all this began, someone acknowledged it. Someone saw me. Not as a meddling mother-in-law. Not as a woman stuck in the past. But as the one who had quietly held the line until Henry found his way back. Jules had taken so much from me. Time. Peace. Years of strained birthdays and missed calls. She made me question if my family would ever be whole again. And now, sitting here in this warm house, with my son happy, my daughter thriving, and a woman who not only loved Henry, but respected his mother, I realized something. We hadn't just removed the rot. We'd rebuilt something better in its place. That bracelet sits on my dresser now. I wear it only on days that matter. And every time I clasp it around my wrist, I remember, patience is a weapon. Silence is power. And love, real love, always finds its way home. We were sitting on my back porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the early spring sun struggle to rise over the rooftops. Henry had spent the night on the couch inside, after Elise urged him to spend more mornings with the people who raised him. She said it casually, but I saw the meaning in her eyes. "She's good for you," I told him, sipping my coffee. He nodded, then looked down at his hands. "Mom, there's something I never told you about Jules." I waited. He took a breath. "She didn't just isolate me from you and Vanessa. She made me believe you were trying to control me. That Vanessa was jealous. That you were manipulative." I stayed silent. She used phrases like emotional boundaries and toxic loyalty. Said you and Vanessa were toxic, that I needed to be my own man. And I believed her. He finally looked at me. "I wasn't just blind, Mom. I chose not to see." My throat tightened. "It's not your fault," I said. "That's what people like her do. They get in your head." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I used to dread dinners with you. Not because of you, but because I knew she'd punish me for enjoying them. A cold shoulder. Silent treatment. Little digs about how sad it was that I couldn't go a week without my mommy." I remembered those nights. Him leaving early. Jules smiling too wide. Vanessa withdrawing. "I let her change me," he said quietly. And when I finally looked up, I realized I didn't like who I'd become. I reached out and placed my hand over his. "You came back." "That's not enough," he whispered. "I need to make it right." And he did. That night, he sat down with Vanessa. Apologized not just for the past year, but for all of it. For the birthdays he missed. The times he doubted her. The silence when she needed him loud. He wrote me a letter, too. Not because I asked, but because Elise told him it would matter. It sits in my nightstand now, folded neatly between 2 pages of an old photo album. And every so often, I pull it out, not to relive the pain, but to remember how far we came. Because now I know, Henry didn't just escape Jules. He found his way back to us. To himself. Vanessa's birthday used to be a minefield. Jules always found a way to overshadow it by throwing a conflicting party, planning a surprise vacation that excluded Vanessa, or casually announcing some fabricated crisis that demanded all attention. The worst year was when she fake cried about a miscarriage that never happened. We only found out months later, when she let it slip during a wine-fueled dinner party that she had faked it to keep the peace. But this year was different. It was Vanessa's 36th and the first since Jules was officially gone. Henry offered to host it at his place, with Elise planning every detail. Vanessa resisted at first, worried it would feel forced. "I don't want to pretend everything's fine just because she's gone," she told me. But I reminded her, "You're not pretending. You're finally living without the weight. So she agreed. And what happened that night was nothing short of healing. Elise decorated the house with candles and fresh tulips, Vanessa's favorite. She baked a lemon cake from scratch. She put a soft jazz playlist on, one that didn't demand attention, but filled the air like sunlight. The guest list was tight, just close friends, family, a few coworkers. Henry made a toast. He didn't mention Jules. Not once. Instead, he talked about resilience. About grace. About how sometimes the strongest people are the ones who smile through silence. Who hold others together while unraveling themselves. Vanessa didn't cry until he said, "You're the reason I found my way back. You never stopped being my sister, even when I stopped being your brother." She hugged him long and hard, and when she pulled away, she whispered something I didn't hear. But I saw the look on Henry's face. Relief. Forgiveness. Peace. After everyone left, Vanessa sat beside me on the porch swing, her heels kicked off, a blanket over her knees. "You know what's crazy?" she asked, gazing up at the stars. "For years, I thought if I fought back, I'd lose him. And now?" I asked. I realized the only way I saved him was by not becoming her. I took her hand in mine. "She took your job. She tried to take your name. But she couldn't take your dignity." She smiled. And in that quiet night air, surrounded by people who finally knew what it meant to feel safe, I realized the war was over. And we had won. It arrived in an unmarked envelope. No stamp. No address. Just slid through the slot in my front door one gray Thursday afternoon. At first, I thought it was a misplaced advertisement or a passive-aggressive note from a neighbor. But the handwriting on the front, angular, sharp, was unmistakable. Jules. I hesitated before opening it. My gut told me it wasn't a threat. Jules didn't leave trails like that. It wasn't her style. Inside was a single piece of paper. Not typed. Handwritten. The words were erratic. Not the practiced venom she used when in control. But something raw. Chaotic. It began. "I know you never liked me." The letter unfolded from there into something I never expected. A confession, not to a crime, but to a weakness. She admitted to feeling like an outsider from the beginning. Claimed Vanessa made her feel small. That I looked at her like she didn't belong. That Henry never fought hard enough for her approval. She wrote about the hotel rumor. Said it was a test, one she never meant for Henry to believe. She wrote about how isolating it was to pretend everything was perfect, even while resenting everyone who loved freely. She wrote that she watched Vanessa thrive despite being targeted. That Elise made her feel replaceable in less than a month. The final line stood alone, almost childlike in its simplicity. "You won. I hope it was worth it." I folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer. I didn't show Henry. Not because he didn't deserve the truth, but because some ghosts deserve to be buried quietly. Jules was gone. Not just from our lives, but from the version of herself she tried to sell to the world. That letter wasn't for reconciliation. It wasn't even an apology. It was proof that even she, in her most twisted way, knew she lost. And we weren't celebrating her downfall. We were too busy rebuilding the joy she tried so hard to kill. Thanksgiving had always been Jules' stage. She insisted on hosting, controlled the seating chart like a military strategist, and cooked only dishes that photographed well. The food was cold by the time we sat down, and everyone left with a headache. But this year, it was different. We held it at my place. A small gathering, just Henry, Elise, Vanessa, and a few close friends who'd stuck by through the chaos. No forced smiles. No power plays. No one trying to make someone else smaller. Elise brought sweet potato casserole. Vanessa made her famous apple tart. Henry roasted the turkey, burned it slightly, but we laughed it off. I made my mother's stuffing recipe for the first time in years. We ate at the same table Jules once tried to dominate. Only now it belonged to us again. Midway through dinner, Vanessa raised her glass. "I just want to say something." Everyone quieted. This is the first time in a long time I felt like I'm not holding my breath. She looked at Henry. "And I'm proud of you." He nodded, eyes glassy. "I let a lot of things happen," he said. "I didn't protect you. Or Mom. Or myself. But I'm done letting people decide who belongs in this family. There was silence. Not the kind Jules used to create, awkward, strained. This was the kind of silence that came with relief. With healing. We spent the rest of the night in sweatpants, playing board games, drinking mulled wine, and telling stories we'd been too afraid to share before. Later, when the house was quiet and everyone had gone home, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the now empty table. And I realized something I hadn't fully accepted until that moment. We weren't recovering from Jules anymore. We were living again. The damage she did? We'd survived it. But more importantly, we'd outgrown her. It was a cold afternoon in early January when Elise knocked on my door alone, no Henry. I invited her in, made us tea, and we sat in the same spot where I once consoled Vanessa after she was falsely accused. It was strange how that couch, those walls, had heard so much pain and now held something entirely different. Elise held the teacup with both hands and looked nervous, like she was rehearsing something in her head. "Claire," she said quietly, "I need to tell you something." I braced myself. Then she smiled. "I'm pregnant." I didn't speak at first. The news hit me like sunlight after a long storm. Warm. Sudden. Overwhelming. "You're..." I whispered. She nodded. 8 weeks. We just found out. I haven't even told Vanessa yet. I wanted you to be the first. Tears welled in my eyes, not the kind of tears Jules ever earned, but the ones that came from hope. From the sense that life, somehow, was starting again. "I know the timing is fast," she added. "And I know what your family's been through." "Elise," I said, reaching out to hold her hand, "you don't need to apologize for bringing something beautiful into this world." She exhaled deeply, the way women do when they've been waiting too long to exhale. "We want you to be part of this," she said. "Not just a grandmother, but a guide. I don't have a mother I speak to. I want our child to grow up knowing your strength, knowing what you've survived." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Jules had once tried to separate us, to cut every cord connecting this family. She weaponized my age, mocked my values, tried to erase my daughter, and bend my son into a stranger. And now, here was Elise, offering me legacy. Life. The continuation of everything Jules tried to destroy. I hugged her then. Held her like she was my own. Because in that moment, she was. And when Henry found out I knew before he did, he only laughed and said, "Of course she told you first. She trusts you the most." That night, I sat by the fire with Vanessa and told her the news. She cried, then smiled, and whispered, "We made it out, didn't we?" Yes, we did. It was bound to happen eventually. News like that doesn't stay quiet for long. Not in a town like ours. And especially not when Elise posted a soft, sun-drenched photo of her and Henry, hand resting gently on her stomach, with a caption that read simply, "New beginnings. Coming soon." The reaction was instant, likes, comments, congratulations. Vanessa shared it. I reshared it. Even coworkers from Allerton and Blake chimed in. The photo was tasteful, warm. But to anyone who knew the past, it was a declaration. Jules was officially gone. And Elise? She was the future. We didn't hear from Jules directly. But we didn't have to. A mutual acquaintance, one of those women who lives on gossip like oxygen, called me 2 days later. "Claire," she whispered like she was delivering national security news. I saw Jules at the cafe. She looked destroyed. I didn't reply. She stared at the photo for 10 minutes. Just sat there scrolling through Elise's page. Didn't order anything. Didn't speak. Just left. I thanked her politely and hung up. I felt no guilt. No smugness. Just clarity. Jules hadn't reached out because she knew there was nothing left to say. Her replacement didn't just look better on paper. She lived better in practice. Kinder. Wiser. Stronger. The contrast was humiliating. Henry didn't ask about her. Vanessa didn't care. Elise didn't even flinch when I mentioned Jules might have seen the post. "She's welcome to see what love looks like," she said. Weeks later, a letter arrived at Vanessa's office. Handwritten. No return address. But again, the handwriting was unmistakable. Jules. Vanessa read it. Then shredded it. She says she regrets everything. Says the divorce ruined her reputation. Says she hopes we can find peace. I raised an eyebrow. She said we. Vanessa nodded. I guess she still thinks she's part of this. We didn't talk about her after that. Not because we were avoiding it, but because she no longer held any weight. Her chapter had closed. And all that remained now was the story we were building without her. Elise didn't want anything big. No games. No matching t-shirts. Just something meaningful, she said. Vanessa took the lead. She organized a garden brunch at a local vineyard just outside town. The theme was soft greens and cream, simple, natural, intimate. Nothing loud. Nothing performative. And everyone who mattered showed up. Colleagues who had stood by Vanessa during the worst of Jules's sabotage. Henry's childhood friends who had distanced themselves during the divorce, but came back once they saw him thriving. Elise's quiet circle, people who weren't there to impress, but to celebrate. And me. Not as a bystander. Not as an obligatory invite. But as the guest of honor. Elise stood up after we'd all eaten, her belly just starting to round beneath her dress. I know I said no speeches, she said, smiling at Vanessa. But there's something I need to say. She turned toward me. Claire, I didn't grow up with warmth. I didn't grow up with someone who taught me what family is supposed to look like. But then I met Henry. And then I met you. My chest tightened. You didn't just welcome me. You protected me. You showed me what strength wrapped in grace looks like. What family looks like. She paused, her voice thick with emotion. This child is going to grow up knowing exactly what love feels like because of the home we're building. And because of you. No one clapped. No one spoke. It was that kind of moment, too full to cheapen with noise. Later, Vanessa found me sitting alone on the edge of the vineyard, watching the breeze move through the trees. You okay? She asked, sliding beside me. I never thought we'd get here, I whispered. Neither did I, she said. But we did. We sat in silence for a long time, sipping lemonade, watching Elise laugh with her friends. There was no trace of Jules here. Not in the stories being told. Not in the memories being made. Not even in Henry's eyes as he helped load gifts into the car. She had become a shadow that no longer fell over any of us. That day, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something to go wrong. I felt peace. Real, lasting peace. And I knew our family wasn't healing anymore. We were whole. Elise went into labor on a stormy night in May. Henry called me just after midnight, his voice tight with nerves. She says she's fine, but I'm driving her in now. Vanessa and I arrived at the hospital an hour later with a change of clothes, snacks, and the quiet readiness that only mothers learn. By the time dawn broke, the clouds had cleared, and so had our family's past. She was born at 6:42 a.m., 7 pounds, 1 ounce. A tiny miracle wrapped in peach-toned blankets. They named her Lena Grace. Elise told me later, Lena, because it means light. Grace, because that's what you gave us. I didn't cry in the delivery room. I waited until I was alone with her. Holding that baby girl in my arms, I felt the years peel away. All the tension. The silence. The dinners ruined by subtle insults. The tears Vanessa cried behind closed doors. The guilt Henry carried. All of it was gone. Lena was untouched by all of it. She only knew warm arms, soft voices, and the smell of love. And I swore then that she never would know otherwise. Vanessa held her next. She's perfect, she whispered, cradling her like something fragile and holy. And she'll never have to unlearn being loved. The day was long but beautiful. Friends came. Nurses smiled. Henry looked like a man reborn. Even Elise's distant cousin showed up with flowers and soup. But one visitor never came. Jules. I knew she would find out. Social media, whispers, the kind of news that travels without help. But she didn't call. Didn't send a card. Didn't try to crash the moment. And for once, I believed it wasn't because she was planning something. It was because she finally understood. She wasn't part of the story anymore. And Lena? She would grow up never knowing the name Jules at all. Only stories about a grandmother who fought for her family. Only memories filled with softness and strength. Only a family that had already paid the price and built something better from the ashes. It came a week after Lena's birth. A single email. No subject line. No introduction. Just one sentence. I heard you had the baby. I hope she has better luck with family than I did. It wasn't addressed to anyone specific. Just a general email sent to Vanessa's work account, one Jules must have remembered from the old days. No name signed. No apology. Just bitterness, thinly veiled as sentiment. Vanessa showed it to me over breakfast, baby monitor buzzing softly in the background. What should I do? She asked. I didn't hesitate. Delete it. She did. No response. No acknowledgement. Nothing. Because people like Jules thrive on oxygen, on the attention, on the reaction, on knowing they've still got their claws in someone's thoughts. But she had no place here anymore. Vanessa didn't flinch. Henry didn't even want to see it when she told him. And Elise? She laughed quietly and said, that poor woman still thinks she matters. Later that week, we celebrated Lena's one-week milestone. Elise's family visited, Henry grilled in the backyard, and Vanessa made a scrapbook of the first photos. We spent the evening flipping through it, each page a quiet celebration of survival, of new life. Jules's name wasn't spoken. Her email already forgotten. And that was the final step. Not screaming. Not revenge. Not a courtroom victory or a dramatic public outing. Just a soft refusal to engage. A silence so complete it became the only answer she'd ever get. We moved forward without her. Without guilt. Without anger. And Lena? She slept through it all, wrapped in her father's arms, her mother humming a lullaby written not in spite, but in peace. Life became simple again. Not boring, just peaceful. Henry dove headfirst into fatherhood. He was the kind of father you rarely see anymore. Early mornings, diaper duty, reading Lena's stories she couldn't understand yet, but that he whispered anyway like spells. Elise glowed. Sleep-deprived, yes, but strong in the way only women made of steel and softness can be. Vanessa came by twice a week. Sometimes with groceries, sometimes just for the excuse to hold Lena and sip tea while watching the family she fought to protect flourish. And me? I stopped watching the door. For years, I had lived in anticipation, waiting for Jules to reappear, to disrupt, to poison. I had guarded my family like a fortress, eyes always on the horizon, listening for footsteps. But now? I went to sleep without locking every thought. I woke up without replaying old arguments. I could finally live in the moment instead of preparing for the next ambush. Jules faded from conversation entirely. Not because we were pretending, but because she no longer occupied space in our reality. We saw old photos sometimes, family gatherings where she stood just off to the side, smiling too hard, holding Henry's hand too tightly. But we didn't linger. Even Henry didn't look away with regret anymore. That wasn't love, he said once, pointing to a photo of their wedding. That was me trying to outrun silence. Now, there was no silence. Lena babbled constantly. Elise hummed in the kitchen. Vanessa filled the house with music when she visited. And I laughed again. Fully. Loudly. Without restraint. We had rhythm. Our own way of doing things. Our own rituals. Sunday dinners. Friday check-ins. Birthdays that weren't overshadowed by manipulation or jealousy. Our family wasn't perfect. But it was ours. Built deliberately. Brick by brick. And every time I held Lena, I felt a quiet kind of joy. Not the explosive happiness that fades fast, but the deep-rooted kind that anchors you. Because I knew. This life, this version of us, was what we fought for. And Jules? She didn't lose because we tore her down. She lost because we stopped letting her matter. Lena turned one on a warm June afternoon. We held her birthday in the backyard, under strings of paper lanterns and a canopy of wisteria I planted 20 years ago. It was the same yard where Vanessa used to play with Henry. Where I had buried my husband's dog. Where laughter once died when Jules arrived, and now, where it had returned in full force. There were no elaborate decorations. No performative guests. Just people who mattered. Elise, radiant even with exhaustion in her eyes, handed Lena a tiny cupcake. Henry crouched beside her, guiding her chubby hands into the frosting while snapping photos. Vanessa stood back, arms crossed, a small smile curving her lips. I watched them from the porch, my fingers wrapped around a glass of lemonade, heart filled with something beyond peace. It was pride. Pride in my daughter, who refused to let herself be ruined. Pride in my son, who broke free from manipulation and became the man he was always meant to be. Pride in the life we built from rubble. And pride in the woman who would never know this version of us. Jules had once believed she could erase Vanessa. Silence me. Break Henry down until he forgot who he was and who had loved him first. She had tried to set the stage and play the starring role in our family. But she didn't understand one thing. We were never acting. We weren't performing for love or tiptoeing around appearances. We were real, messy, honest, and stronger than she gave us credit for. And now, here we were. Whole. Laughing. Together. No one asked about Jules. No one wondered what she would have thought. No one even remembered the shadow she used to cast over this home. Because Lena's first steps were taken in sunlight. Her first words spoken in warmth. Her world had no space for cruelty disguised as love. She would grow up knowing only stories of strength. Of a family that refused to be torn apart. Of a mother and grandmother who fought quietly and won completely. Of a life rebuilt not with rage, but with resolve. Jules faded.
My grandmother told me this story. Thanks for watching this video, like and subscribe. Bye bye!